Hi there Libra, thank you for joining me for your monthly forecast for March. The month begins with the Sun in the part of your horoscope to do with obligations, work, diet, fitness, anything to do with the basic structure of your life in a pretty down-to-earth, earthy way. However, your ruling planet Venus spends the first half of this month pretty well in a more playful area and is joined by Mercury for the first 4 days. So it doesn't have to be all work and no play, and whatever changes you make can be enterprising, they can be pleasurable, and they can see you creative. But if they have some kind of end product, I do think in the early parts of this month it's going to be a good thing. Now you're also going to have some options in week 1, because on the first day there's a quarter moon in Sagittarius. This is going to create quite a lot of electric energy. So the backdrop from the first day to the 7th can see you a little bit on edge, particularly if you're trying to cram in too much to the start of the month. Slow things down, try to prioritize, make a plan for what's truly essential, and leave the things that are not so important to another time. Now Mercury moves into Pisces on the 5th. Now this is a planet which is not so happy in this location because it's in its detriment here. But for you, this is particularly important because it's about precision. But Pisces isn't really a zodiac sign that's much to do with precision. It's more to do with dreams. So you're going to have to work very hard in the following 21 days to make sure that you're crisp and clear in all you do and say. However, on the 6th, there is an alteration which is truly great news. Mars hustles his way into your 3rd solar house, joining up with the rather restrictive energies of Saturn, which have been shaping the way you think and communicate over the last 7 or 13 months. Mars in this area is going to make you a lot more dynamic. You could also see you being more active, and it's going to be with you for quite a long time this year, and it's an extended orbit due to a rather unusual ecliptic. Now this particular phase of the journey is going to last until the end of May. So if you find yourself wanting to have your say a little bit more and being rather more assertive, it wouldn't be a surprise. But Saturn is still there and it's still very influential, and it is going to become even more influential from the 9th, because then there is a solar eclipse. This solar eclipse is going to take you forwards for the next 6 months. It cooperates with a lunar eclipse in your sign, which occurs on the 23rd of this month. The two are going to be just as important to one another. They're not going to work in isolation. That's key. On one hand, the lunar eclipse is asking you to be much more conscious of your individuality, your need to express yourself, what makes you different from other people. Whereas the solar eclipse is much more about what you can give to others and how much contribution and sacrifice you're prepared to make. The two are in a quincunx, or inconjunct. Now that doesn't mean to say that they're great at each other really badly, but it's not always easy to balance being a giver with being someone who's totally focused on our own needs. So obviously it's something you're going to have to work at over the next half year. Also, it's true that this particular solar eclipse on the 9th is in opposition with Jupiter, which is in your 12th solar house. You may find yourself developing a desire to do something that's really much more uplifting than just doing a job or pursuing hobbies for the sake of them. You want to do something which actually helps personkind, which is really laudable, but it still needs to be right for you, the individual, remember, or you could get bored, or it needs to be something where you feel actively involved in it. On the other hand, you may start developing strategies which are never going to see the light of day. So your thinking has to be realistic. And what's going to help you is the role of Saturn. Saturn is going to anchor this solar eclipse, but not in a particularly easy way. And you may find that at work there could be some politics, there could unfortunately be some backbiting. Not everybody is going to be an ally, and you're going to need to choose your words with a great deal of care. You're known as being the diplomat of the zodiac. But of course, like everyone, when you get frustrated, your ire can come out. And since Saturn has been working its way through Sagittarius, you haven't always been quite as able to craft what you say to other people with quite the light touch that you have in the past. In fact, you haven't always wanted to. You've wanted to be a bit more direct and a bit more blunt so people have a bit more respect for you, and quite right too. But there's a balance to be found. And I do feel that throughout the rest of this month, but also over this next 6 months, do be very cautious about how you're working, who you're working with, but most of all, look after your nervous system, because if you don't, you may find yourself getting very stressed, very run down and very exhausted, despite the helping hand that Mars undoubtedly is going to give you. Now, between the 9th and the 12th, someone may put a massive guilt trip on you in order to try and get you to do something to help them resist this. If you're undergoing any kind of interviews or thinking about a job, leave it beyond the 12th, because your thinking could be rather muddled and unrealistic. Venus arrives, your ruler, on the 12th, and that is going to help you to relate to other people in a more efficient way. Venus is kind of okay in Pisces, and here she's really asking you to show that little bit of willingness, that little bit of sacrifice, because it can come back to you. But here too, from the 19th to the 23rd, Venus goes across Neptune, and around a relationship, you're going to want to feel that a partner makes the same kind of contribution and commitment as you. If they're sort of hanging back and being a bit evasive, you might think very carefully about whether you want to continue it. And this theme of relationships becomes a lot stronger from the 20th, the 22nd and the 23rd, when the Sun, Mercury and the lunar eclipse all come through in your sector of relating in terms of the Sun and Mercury, and then your unhappiness around any relationships will become much clearer from the 23rd. Don't be too quick to make any decisions. There's an impetuous link between Uranus and Mercury in the last few days of this month, which could see you make some snap decisions or meet someone who really sweeps you off your feet, because they're just great fun to be with. And what I will tell you, and this is fantastic news, is that although Saturn does go into a retrograde on the 26th, which may mean you need to get your car serviced, think very carefully about all forms of domestic devices, which could prove rather unreliable. There is a link between Uranus and Pluto which has caused particular mischief for Libras over the last 4 years, where an uncertainty around relationships has left you on edge so much of the time. Well, that's beginning to fade out as this month comes to a close, and that's something to truly celebrate. And ironically, Saturn actually makes a great link with Uranus pretty well for the whole of this month, which just says to you, if you're thinking very carefully about the people you can relate well to, the people who understand your values, there is the chance to reform your relationships. But you need to be with people who feed your soul and who practically you can relate to. And with Jupiter squaring up with Saturn all this month, there could be times when you're surprised at the lack of trustfulness or security that does exist around some involvements you have. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you for joining me. Good luck and goodbye for now.